Daniel Munoz founded La Prensa, the region's first Spanish-English paper, in 1976 during turbulent times in the Latino community. For the past 39 years, the Munoz family ran the paper. Now my guest, businessman and former political consultant Art Castañares, is the paper's new publisher. And Art, briefly walk us through the paper's history.
Sure. It was started in the mid-'70s as a newsletter. And it was back when there were no Latino outlets and there wasn't a Spanish language TV station here in town. And they started it more to influence and to educate the Latino community in politics, upcoming elections, important civic issues that were going on. And it was in December of '76 that it came out as a real newspaper.
A weekly paper.
A weekly Friday paper.
And what's it like today? How much of it is in English and how much of it is in Spanish?
Our mix is about 60-40 English to Spanish, and we have articles that are written exclusively in Spanish, and some of them are covered in both languages. We have an internal Spanish front page, and so it's about 60-40, sometimes a little bit more English than Spanish.
And what's your vision for the paper?
Well, you know, it's different. I've spent the last 25 years in politics, working both for the California State Legislature and then after that as a political consultant. And I've worked on over 70 campaigns. I've worked with the media from the outside in, trying to get them to cover some of these stories. And now I have the privilege of being on the other side. And so in order to do that, I retired from running campaigns. I didn't think it was fair or ethical to be running campaigns and then also cover those stories.
Sure, and that was my question. Dozens of political campaigns, as you said, Gray Davis, Ben Hueso, Cheryl Cox, most recently. So how do you ensure that your political ideology and this really rich past that you've had doesn't actually slip into the paper's news coverage?
Well, you know, I try to be non-biased. I try to run the stories based on the issues that are going on, and it's going to be my commitment not to misuse the privilege of the media that I now have in a way that's slanted.
Will you be working with an editor to help with that?
Yes, but we have an editor coming in. He'll be here in about 2 weeks. He's currently works for a different outlet, so I can't announce who it is, but it's somebody that you know. And it's somebody with a journalistic background who has been an editor of a paper. And our art director is somebody who used to run some local papers in Orange County. So there are some real journalists involved. But this paper wasn't founded by journalists. Dan Munoz Sr. and Dan Munoz Jr. were community activists. And so what I bring to the table as a publisher is my background of 26 years of politics and business. This is really a business. And what our business is having enough advertisers to be able to put our paper out every week. And the content is something that can educate the community. And at the end of the day, the only two currencies that a community has is either economic clout or political clout. And I think both of these can be exercised through a newspaper.
How do you explain? How do you plan to expand the paper?
Well, we currently deploy the paper from San Ysidro all the way to Escondido to Oceanside. It's a county-wide paper. Large communities in Oceanside and in Vista, San Marcos areas as well. And so we're going to expand it not only in print, but also a huge internet presence. We're developing our own custom phone app so people can download it and then get fed information as news is breaking. We only publish on Fridays. So sometimes there are things that happen on Monday and we have to wait 4 days in order to get it out. It's going to be a lot bigger presence online than in print.
On both, are you going to have a column, an either online column or in the paper?
Yeah, I already do. I have a small column on page 2 that's sort of an insider column. And then there's an article that I write that's in place of an editorial. We call it a perspective piece. And I write about different things. I wrote last week about how there are no Latinos starring on TV shows. There were more in the 70s, 80s, and 90s than there are today. And 3 weeks ago, I wrote about the Kentucky clerk who wouldn't sign the marriage certificates for same-sex couples. And what that piece was about the rule of law, where it happens to be that this elected official is discriminating against same-sex marriages, but it could just as easily be Latinos.
Let me ask you this. With all the Spanish language news, though, available, and there's quite a bit now compared to when the paper started in the 70s, why does our region still need a bilingual newspaper? You
know, some of these stories are so small in nature. So it's about neighborhoods or about a school district or about something that most of the general media just don't cover. And so when I saw that Warren Buffett bought a whole stable of local weekly and daily papers, and just last week Gannett bought $280 million worth of weekly and local papers. I think there are niche papers in niche communities or in communities of interest that are still very powerful. I wouldn't want to have a general circulation paper like the UT. I think those are hard to manage. But when you have more of a finite audience, I think they're still very powerful.
All right. La Prensa publisher Art Castañares, thank you so much.
Thank you, Peggy.